Okay, hint number one, you're a marketer. And if you're not, you're possibly, just possibly, one of the biggest threat risks to your project. Number two, just remember, people forget. And number three, use your brain to solve problems. It's not a storage bin. There are all sorts of wonderful automated tools that are supposed to be there so that you don't have to store every single bitty thing that you need to be concerned about. It's called a computer and scheduling. So, we're talking today about what in traditional project management was referred to as a communications plan, and specifically the role that your awareness of the strategic ties between your project and the organization's strategic objectives, the role that that has to play. Now, oh, by the way, if you like what we're doing here with a very pragmatic approach, and we try to give you at least three, sometimes there are four suggestions about why these things are important to do, then please pop in on a regular basis, subscribe or like, or, maybe even forward it to a friend. Anyway, a communications plan in other professions is often called internal communications, which is also called internal marketing and education. Now, I know. We're not salespeople. We're project managers. Well, and we're also project leaders. And even the greatest of leaders needs help on occasion, needs to build bridges and partnerships. You don't have to look far to see that. In the business environment, on the global stage, partnerships, well, partnerships and bridges frequently are why things actually will get past the concept through planning to actual execution and completion. So maybe you're not, quote, selling. Yeah, I know. For some people, that's a really dirty word, but we'll go into that one a little bit later. But what you are doing is educating ever so gently by issuing gentle reminders of why the project's in place, what it means to the organization when it succeeds, and what it could mean to the organization if it doesn't. Now, remember, the success of your project is really, really intertwined with the way that other parts of the organization are interdependent. So, using a gentle education aspect to your communications plan means a couple of things. One, it kind of makes sure that you reach as many people as possible. Two, it's not overt selling because it's not really selling, it's educating. It's letting people know what's going on with your project, sometimes asking for help. Also, how is it that we sometimes miss someone who should have been at the table as a stakeholder? And when you miss somebody, when they feel drastically underheard or completely unheard, it's that much more difficult for you to build a bridge with them, build a partnership with them. So, using the communications plan and taking a look at who else benefits by the strategic ties between your project's objective and the organization's strategic objectives, well, that can help you sort of figure out who might be a stakeholder that you might have otherwise overlooked. And then there was hint number two. Remember, people forget. And it's not because somehow, some way, your project suddenly lost all prioritization and all criticality. It doesn't mean that at all. And it doesn't mean that they think you're forgettable. It could mean that one of these 782 emails that they got between the time that you took on this project And the next time you have to talk with them, well, the, those emails just, might have distracted them. Come on, let's face it. Because so many of us are still working virtually or in hybrid situations, we depend even that more heavily on our electronic tools. And that is, I'd like to say wonderful, but it's necessary. Unfortunately, it also means that we could have an inbox just full of people wanting our attention. And if that's what happens to us, can you imagine what happens to people who are even further up on the food chain? Ooh. And I know it's ironic because they're the very people who have asked you to take on this project. They haven't really forgotten that you're doing it, and they haven't forgotten how important it is. Ironically, it might be kind of a sign of trust. They know they gave it to you. They trust you to execute and do a beautiful job of it, and they know that you and your team are trustworthy, which leaves them to worry and fret and sometimes really agonize over other things. But remember, part of your job as a team leader is to make sure that those people who support you are given a steady stream of good reasons to continue supporting you. I remember at one point I had been working with a colleague that on a competing project, meaning we both wanted the same engineers and we both wanted the same testers. Well, I kind of got complacent. The vice president, who was my direct sponsor, was running around like a crazy person, making sure that he used his influence to get the backing, support, and endorsement of a number of people at his level, which was great because it's always a good thing to have vice presidents on your level. You know, you're back. Except that my colleague, who I wasn't terribly fond of, went directly to a functional manager and managed to get the staffing between our two projects switched over. And all of a sudden, three of my five best engineers and testers were assigned to his project, which, by the way, had a significantly lower level of priority. It's great to have vice presidents have your back. It really is. At the same time, it's your responsibility to reach out to people who are closer to your own level and who can have the opportunity or lack thereof to support you. That functional manager was two steps down the hierarchy from the vice presidents that John was running around recruiting. And so when Jeffrey went in and made his pitch, she had no reason to believe that it was unreasonable. Didn't know anything about my project, just remembered that she had been asked for specific engineers and testers, and well, everyone on her team was pretty darn good. Swapping them shouldn't be a big deal because I hadn't built that partnership, that bridge with that particular functional manager. And by the time I went to Shelley, it was too late for at least two of the three people that had gotten swapped out. Luckily, it wasn't for one of them, but don't leave it to chance. Some of my students even call communication plans influence strategies, and that's not far off because it's influencing through education and influencing through a steady, gentle stream of updates. Now, the other thing is, you kind of want to remind them by always playing into their with them. So, what's in it for me? It demonstrates that you've been listening to them, for one thing. After all, you couldn't know what they care about and therefore what's in it for them if you weren't listening to them talk about what they care about and be able to tie that back to why it's a good idea for them to work with you side by side as opposed to opposing. Look, in every project I've ever been a leader of, every project where I've ever been the project manager, there isn't one person who doesn't have a fairly hefty workload. Let's face it, we don't each have only one project or only one responsibility. And some of our team members not only work on multiple projects, contributing to multiple objectives, but they also have, quote, their day job. So, hit number three, automate it. That's one of the beauties of a communication plan is that you can plan it. And in a previous video, we talked about using an if then statement to be a guideline. If this happens, then this is what we need to do. And it's kind of handy to have those on hand. Think of it as if we get early time on the manufacturing line in order to create a prototype, then what steps can we take to give them a working model so that they can create a prototype that at least gives our client enough to work with? If then, if we get an earlier slot in the manufacturing line for a prototype, then this is the list of elements, parts, functions that can be on the next prototype. It can be very handy. If suddenly Shelley is avoiding me in the hallways or goes to her name only on a Zoom call when I'm speaking, I have a distinct impression that something might be happening. If Shelley's trying to avoid me, then I need to get to the bottom of it. That's what's really going on, and assess whether or not there's something to worry about. If then statements, they're wonderful tools. There are people who believe that this means automatically I am suggesting a tool that is going to fly in the face of an agile project management approach. And it doesn't. The whole idea of having a framework for your communications is that you have established where the boundaries are. The if this has happened, then we'll do this. The I need to touch base with Shelley, I need to touch base with John, and I need to keep an eye on Jeffrey because things are going to change. And having laid it out in a flexible framework, a solid communications plan that includes addressing the strategic ties of your project to the organization's strategic objectives is a perfect way to offer you a way of responding with agility. It actually supports it, not opposes it. You know, in Leadership Driven Project Management Academy, we're on Facebook, by the way. Check out our group. We're not really going to tout any single methodology. I've used Extreme Lean in product development. A touch of Six Sigma, not an awful lot. When doing an absolute preliminary job of quantifying what the metrics need to be. I've used Agile, sprints and scrums were my life for a while there. And also even dip my toe in Prince 2 when I was working for an overseas bank. Here's the thing. We don't push any one approach because there is simply no guarantee that any single approach is going to offer you all the tools you need. As a wise team leader, you're going to look for the tools that are going to help your team succeed. And they might be found in any number of places, plucked out of any number of methodologies. Remember, it's how you use the tools from these approaches, methodologies, whatever you want to call it, It's how you use them that really matters. It's how your team is best served by them that really matters. So, yeah, we're going to continue our practice of just, methodology agnostic. I'm Kimi Ziemski. Thanks for joining us today. And remember, communications tool, influence strategy, marketing plan. I don't care what you call it. It's a method to the madness of keeping in touch with your stakeholders, and that is the only part that's important, not the name of the plan. I'll see you later.